Welcome to the Attachment Theory Therapist Podcast. Ed Peterson here. We've got a great show. We've got Dr. Jim Thomas, EFT trainer from Colorado. Stay tuned.
Welcome to VELCRO Love, a podcast about attachment theory, relationships, therapy, love, and sex. Our content is based on the groundbreaking work of Dr. Sue Johnson, the founder of Emotionally Focused Therapy. Your host is Ed Peterson, licensed psychotherapist and certified supervisor in emotionally focused therapy. Our goal is to share the healing power of attachment theory and emotional regulation with as many people as possible, and to have fun along the way.
Well, hello, people out there. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Ed.
This is quite exciting. My name is Ed Peterson, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, Salt Lake City. I'm a therapist. I'm also a certified emotionally focused therapist and supervisor. And this is my new podcast. And the name of this podcast is The Attachment Lens. The Attachment Lens, and then in small, lowercase, a place where we talk about all things relationship, all things mental health, and we just have fun. And I want to get right to my guest today here, which is Dr.
No, doctor.
No, doctor. I always go to doctor. This is Jim Thomas. Jim Thomas. Oh, I love that. So Jim, before I introduce you, I just want to say welcome and thank you for being here. It's a real super big honor to have you here, because we've done some of this before. And here's my take on you, Jim, is you have as big a heart as you do a mind, and you have a lot of experience. I mean, you've been doing this therapy gig for how many years?
Well, 34, 33, 34, 30. I don't know. A while.
A while, right?
10 years. 10 years.
Right, because at least you're at least 47 years old. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, one of the reasons why I'm attracted to talking with you, is that our conversations almost always they move between factual and information, and also to really matters of the heart, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's kind. Thank you.
Okay. So let me just, I want to introduce Jim, and I actually wrote this down because I want to make sure that I get it right, because there's so much good stuff. So Jim Thomas, my guest here, is a marriage and family therapist, an EFT, or emotionally focused therapy educator, certified EFT, or emotionally focused therapy trainer. He was the key leader in developing one of the most vibrant EFT communities in the world, which is in Colorado. And I know that personally because I've been over there. It's a great community. Jim has developed or co-developed 7 unique master classes in EFT, or he has originated the Core Skills Plus option, led externships around the U.S. So the Core Skills Plus option, and led externships around the U.S. This is in emotionally focused therapy, which is also very much grounded in attachment theory. In addition, he has taught therapists in 4 continents now about specific topics like shame, addiction, and work with trauma. And more recently, he's been doing a lot of great stuff. Jim has been bringing applied attachment theory to residential and wilderness addiction recovery and trauma programs around the U.S. So Jim has really been taking this attachment theory to a very important place, which is the recovery community, where people are trying to recover from addictions. And he provides intensives to couples and families in his Lakewood, Colorado office. Jim is in Lakewood, Colorado, does intensives. And so wow. So Jim, well, what do you think of all that stuff that I just read about you?
I go right to Rogers, early influence, Carl Rogers, on being a person, reading that in college in 78 or something. I mean, the book was published earlier than that. I go to Salvador Minuchin, and I go to Suzanne Pope and Jan Reinach's influence on me, and my first supervisor out of grad school, Sharon Olson, that taught me. I'm 3 months out of grad school, and I'm telling her all about this family, and I've got all my ideas and things, and she goes, "Slow down." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Slow down. You need to get to know them first. Those are interesting ideas, but you need to know them
That's
first."
that's almost kind of a mic drop, right?
Yes.
Slow down, Jim.
And then for a year, I'm a note taker. I have my legal pad. I take notes, and up here I wrote "slow down" every family therapy session.
Slow down.
And that was the first time I started singing to myself in sessions sometimes. "Slow down, Jim, you move too fast. You gotta let these emotions last." And I just slow down. I think about all the families, and I first started in family therapy that are inside, that influenced me, mistakes I've made, things they taught me, all the couples who've come to see me. I think about my wife is always in the office with me, my friends, my board of connectors. That's where I go. Like, none of those things, yes, there's a gym in there. There's some sort of way I show up that maybe it must be working if I keep getting invited to talk,
Right,
and have influence and stuff. But, none of us are an island. That's the biggest illusion out there. None of us get here alone. If Skip Barber's executive secretary, that I'm annoying because I want to do an internship at Denver Children's Home, and she says we don't take master's students, and I say, why not? You take bachelor's and PhDs, and do you want to talk to Skip about it? And he's the executive director of this like $9 million a year place. And what I find out later, Skip falls in love with me, platonically as a mentee, and brings me on as the first master, supports my postgrad, pays my tuition for postgrad. These things don't happen in
Well, here
alone.
I want to jump in as a good therapist and make sure I reflect some of the things that you just said, Jim, because it's interesting, because that was my experience as I was reading your bios and all these things that you've done, which are impressive. I was so curious about how that would land for you, because I think it's an interesting thing that we all go through, is that there's this thing that happens inside, at least of me, which is I want to be authentic. I want to be just sharing. I want to be sharing what I do. And I hear that from you. I hear this sense of, that all the accolades and the this and that are not as important to you as the fact that you bring your heart and your mind to your work. And that's why I think this person you're talking about, uber successful person, fell in love with the work that Jim Thomas does. And it's funny how I would stutter on this, but maybe we should create a Jim Thomas fan club.
Thanks. That's a nice idea. See, I don't think my shame would have said, "Oh, that's kind of neat," decades ago. So my own recovery from shame, it's like, well, that's nice. What a nice thought,
Yeah.
I think it's important in terms of attachment, what I'm saying, and I don't say it as some sort of like, it was my honest response in the moment to reading that stuff. And then I think about like Jan Reinach and Suzanne Pope, and Jan was more the head, Suzanne's more the heart.
Right.
And when you say heart and mind, there's balance, and lead from the heart, and let your mind be your heart soldier. These kind of things are very meaningful to me, because I think that's been my own personal journey in this, American life. I grew up in an individualistic culture. When I go to get my bachelor's, literally, in bachelor psychology, emotion was this thing that we're supposed to manage.
Right.
It's still that way when I get to grad school. such a gift that people like Sue Johnson come in and say, wait a minute, emotions are so important. And emotions are so important if you're learning about attachment theory, because these strong emotions we have, the limbic system of the human exists for the, this primary purpose of the synchronous exchange of our emotional states. And these emotions, so many of the researchers are telling us, the strongest ones we have beyond like a reptilian fear response to seeing a coiled rope, are for connection with other humans. And we also
Yes.
do this with dogs and cats and things too, but primarily with other humans. And so anything when we're talking about therapy, individual, couples, family, or group, enjoyed all of those.
Yeah.
These are all relational experiences,
Yeah.
all feeding off this core attachment. And I want to make sure whenever we talk about it that we don't just talk about it in some academic fashion and debate the nuances and debate whether or not this is avoidant behavior versus anxious, insecure behavior and stuff, and lose what Allison Lee, who just passed, and sadly, Allison was the first or second trainer after Sue. And Allison, and people would ask her, where are you in the model in this clip or something? She'd say, I don't know. I'm just being with the people.
So Jim, a couple things that I want to make sure we highlight is for our listeners out there that may be new to attachment theory or may not know much about an emotionally focused therapy. What just jumped into my mind and my heart as you were talking, as you mentioned Dr. Sue Johnson, and I want to make sure that I communicate my deep sense of gratitude to Dr. Sue Johnson, who really, from her heart and her mind, created EFT, emotionally focused therapy. And I recommend to any of the people listening here to go and find her book, which is called Hold Me Tight, and many other things, videos.
A Love Sense is another great book.
Love stuff, right? And so, but also, Jim, and this is where I think that we can piggyback on what you're saying, is she has a quote that says something about how islands and isolation are good for rocks, but they're not good for people.
Yeah.
Right? So let's do this, Jim. I want to ask you a question, and I
sure
think this will relate to exactly what you're saying. And I gotta also just say that inside I feel a sense of excitement and a sense of wonder, because I'm trying to develop that in my own life and work. It's a curiosity. And so I notice when I get overwhelmed, and I also notice when I just feel a positive energy, right? And I can feel that right now. And so the question is this, what right now, Jim, whether it's in your teaching, could be about addiction, could be about any aspect of the work that you do, what is most on your heart and your mind right now that, if you had to impart, like you say, the word is wisdom, but we'll really just talk about our experiences. What would you like our listeners to maybe know about attachment, and just from the standpoint of what is on your heart and your mind, maybe what's your cutting edge of experience and learning right now? I'm sorry that's a long question, but I hope that's okay.
Well, I was checking in with myself. I feel open and curious. It's fun to talk with you. Well, I was just in Chicago recently doing a workshop on experiencing and working with shame. Primarily EFT therapists. I think there's about 70 there. And I think if I take the feedback, the cutting edge is really being with, and I go back to like Allison saying, when people would say, what step are you in, or what stage are you in your model, et cetera, at this point, and this, and she's like, I don't know, I'm just following the emotion and being with the people. That often I go to that Rumi quote, that it's really not about getting more love, it's about removing these obstacles that we might have for loving. How to be more loving as therapists, right? To embrace everyone that comes your way, as much as possible, including people who aren't in the room with you, which is, I think, the biggest opportunity and challenge to being like a systemic attachment therapist, right? That it's not just, I think what happens, I saw this in the addiction field, so that's a leading edge thing, I suppose. They would come to this attachment training and say, well, we're a very attachment-based program. We make it so that the person of concern that comes to our program can feel safe attachment with us.
Right.
As they deal with their crappy family.
Right.
I'm like, whoa, wait, systemic family therapy, Minuchin and Montalvo and Aponte and
So
Virginia Satir. So
yeah,
that's another leading edge thing. So how to love and how to be with, and then to be in an emotional experiential process with people.
Mhm.
How do you do this last thought that Jung used to say? I had my Jungian years, which were so powerful, man. I never had richer dreams.
Yeah, which
Jung
we
used to say to people, learn everything you can about the human psyche, learn everything you can about archetypes and these things that Jung was into, and then go in the room and be with the person and leave that.
yes,
Leave that, be with them. And I think we struggle with, as couples therapists and family therapists, being with people and being in the struggle with them and really getting to know them, as Sharon told me, and slowing down. And when pain comes up and the family or the partner can't respond to that pain, they can't take care of them and soothe them, we get frustrated. And
right.
that's where judgment comes in. That's where labeling comes in. That's where taking sides comes in. That's where trying to problem solve comes in. That's where, I just did a talk with Annabelle Bugatti about get your CBT out of my EFT. Right?
Well,
Like, yeah.
yeah. So Jim, let me just jump in, because one of the phrases that I use sometimes when I'm working with clients and they're starting to drop into their feelings, and we do some work, and then maybe we come out of it for a few minutes just to give them a breather, and I'll make a comment about what I'm experiencing as I'm with these people, right? And sometimes I say, well, as a therapist, I just did a backflip, meaning that I felt in my heart a connection with you.
Yeah.
And it's my way of letting them know kind of what jumps into my heart. And
Nice.
so, you see, and so as you're saying this, and again, for our listeners who may not be therapists, I think that any therapist who's listening right now will be tracking with us 100%. See, and also though, Jim, like, and maybe a great place to go would be addiction, right? Because the addiction is so common. There's so much pain and suffering out there in the whole world. We're such an addicted society that what I hear you saying is, as a therapist and as a worker, a group worker, or a rehab center consultant, you're helping people to slow down and to maybe just ask the question, what is it like to be with people and not move so fast? Because my brain moves so fast and can so quickly lose that connection, right? And so I'm hoping that for our listeners also, that they'll be hearing this attachment frame, which is what you and I are really talking about, which is that at a DNA level, all of us, we need each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that healing and growth and emotional and mental health is, boy, it's not just about taking an antidepressant pill, which can be a really helpful thing. But if we help people to have an experience of what it's like to connect and be there, like you're saying, be there in the treatment center, or especially be there when this maybe addicted person, the client's family, shows up, right? And what is it actually like? Because my experience is that a lot of people really just don't have much experience with connecting, especially with their loved ones, and especially if there's conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say then, just for therapists and non-therapists, is I think connection is there. The workshop that I think really I did a workshop back in like 2013, gaining traction, get to softenings, and I was showing 4 couples and what we call in this therapy world stage 1 of EFT, and then all 4 couples in what we call bonding events. And I showed 1 couple dealing with some severe childhood sexual abuse and bringing the partner into that memory and helping to heal. And I started it by saying, what's the one thing that will change everything? And that is to believe in the bonds, these emotional bonds that are in this family, this couple, this system. And so if you're listening, I would say, if you want to pause here in a moment, when I ask, close your eyes, look inside, and who did you bring with you today? Who are you in conflict with? And then you could do it, right? You picture that person and you can feel like the tension come up in your body.
Well, I
And like, who are you missing? Who dead or alive do you wish you could talk to today? Who do you wish would come in the room and interrupt and say, hi, I'm here? And then see what happens in your body. Who are you feeling kind of neutral about, but they're still with you? Who are you angry with? Who are you? And it's a very simple exercise to say, well, I am an attachment connected person. I have all sorts of people inside me that I have feelings about. I think the misnomer and an error we make in the EFT community in particular is to imagine that we're helping couples to connect rather than they have connection. I just did a phone call with a couple that was ready to cancel an intensive. And when I said to one of the partners after like 15 minutes of that content grousing, I call it, just my partner, blah, 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 blah. And then I said, wow. Then that partner talked for 15 minutes. And then I said, to the first partner, sounds like you've been hurt by life a lot in the last like 15 years. And then there's silence. And then I said, and this negative sort of cycle that you're in with her or him or them, that you miss them. And then I hear sniffles. And then I hear the other partner say, we're not canceling, Jim. We're coming. And then I say, because of what I'm doing, it's like so many, we can fall, we start watching what's in front of us. Sue is trying to teach us, what's in front of us, all that reactivity is actually a sign that there's connection.
Yes.
Sue never said we're gonna create connection, like that's not there. That's an unfortunate term, like creating connection makes it sound that way. I think what she really meant, if you go watch her, is we're fostering and deepening connection. Right. And that's the difference. And so if you're just listening and you're not a therapist, like if you have a conflictual relationship with like your father and you haven't talked to that person in 4 years, deep down inside, you hope that something would happen, that he would call and say, sorry, I haven't been a good dad for you. You've got a sibling that you're estranged with. You've got a friend, that there's stuff going on and you don't know how to tell them, like there's something happening here and I don't know how to tell you because I'm afraid to risk the relationship. Or your partner, that we live in all these relationships and we need therapists and a culture and books and things to teach us how to be in and develop better relationships rather than, oh my gosh, sounds like your relationship's toxic. Maybe you should end it. You need to take care of yourself. You need to learn how to be by yourself. You need to learn how to, don't be so codependent. Don't be so enmeshed. Don't be so,
you see,
I get riled up.
Well, no, but I love that. Again, I feel your passion. And, something that you said there, I think is a really important distinction that is really, wow, a huge blessing to me. It feels like the universe just dropped something into my heart and my mind that I need to remember, which is that, yes, these bonds exist and that these longings that we have for safe attachment with people, it's not something that doesn't exist in it. That it's not like a plant that we have to go to Home Depot and buy a brand new plant and plant it. The plant is already there in our hearts. And what I hear you saying is, whether it's therapy or maybe just hopefully we're encouraging some of you people out there to just have a deeper conversation with your loved one or have a conversation with someone that you're estranged with, but to remember that the connection and the bond is already there. but it's almost like maybe we just have to feed it. Maybe we have to give it a little bit of fertilizer, to
Aerate, water, get some sun.
yeah, as you said that, Jim, the thing that I just want to share, and then I want to go back to you, is that as you talked about, who is here in the room with us, right?
Yeah.
See that this morning, this is a great example. Last night, my wife and I had a pretty difficult conversation / argument. I went to bed not feeling great, and woke up this morning, and one of the things that she did is she didn't go into a lot of explanation. She did say that she was sorry for her part, but she leaned over on the bed, Jim, and she just hugged me, and it was like a bear hug from behind. It was like, and it was amazing how healing it was. And then as I'm walking out the door, she says, give him hell. You're going to do great, and I'm with you. And so she came to me with, to this session, but also my father, who passed away 8 years ago. Realized that he sits here with me
there you
also
go.
because I'm lucky that when he passed, he and I were complete emotionally, and we were connected. But I think when I get maybe discouraged, or when I get in my anxious attachment, at sometimes when I get jumpy and I talk really fast and I get very cognitive, sometimes I feel like I hear him whispering in my ear, something like you said, slow down.
Yeah.
And slow down, and Ed, know that you already know what to do. It's inside you. Just let it come out. And maybe that's partly what you're talking about with, and what Sue is talking about with Dr. Sue Johnson, who you're both saying that we're just trying to help people find this connection that is already wanting to come out. Is that close?
Well, I think it's like a pre-existing condition. Like the plant you said, you don't have to buy one. And when we say like creating connection, which has been like a lot of the language, I think that's part of what I was trying to counter in the Gaining Traction Get to Softenings workshop by starting with this. What's this one thing that if you do this, believe this, will make everything more effective and more graceful for you, as a therapist or in our lives, is that we have bonds. Very few people in the world that don't have an emotional bond with somebody. Now, if we feel unsafe, insecure, and when we say unsafe as therapists, we don't mean that there's necessarily like domestic violence, more like I couldn't tell you. I always think like if somebody tells you they don't trust you, and it's not in anger, like in a court situation, they must trust you a little bit to tell you they don't. They're really saying I don't fully trust you, because if they didn't trust you at all, I've never told someone I just didn't trust at all that I don't trust them. I'd be afraid they'd use it against me somehow. So it's a sign of like insecurity, right? There's the difference between I don't feel safe and solid and secure in this relationship, and there's no bond in this relationship. And
see, and I just got to jump in and just say that's brilliant, because yeah, I mean, so many of us, when we're approaching that conversation, whether we're going to say that we don't trust someone, or someone's going to say they don't trust us, our fear jumps up and says, there's no connection, there's no bond, or I'm going to get abandoned here. But what I hear you saying is, well, actually, if we're even attempting that conversation, it's because there is some safety, and maybe I want to find more connection.
yeah, that's a good way to say it. I often would say in workshops or mentoring therapists, look for the connection that is there. That's, ask them when they feel closest, ask them, and take it seriously. Like if, the person says, I feel close when the two of us just hang out and do nothing. I feel closer when we get all the housework done. Don't in some, judgmental fashion say, well, that doesn't count. Well, what's meaningful to you about that? Well, when we're on the same team, I like it. What happens when you're on the same team? I feel, like we're looking for signs of the bond. And if you're listening and you're in a highly reactive relationship with this, you know this person, you care about this person, the brilliance of this attachment understanding is the level of your reactivity to that person may, in this backwards way, be an indication of how important they are to you. So what is getting stirred up in you? Why, why do you keep hurting my feelings and criticizing me? Why do you turn away from me when I'm talking? How come you never follow through on your promises? These are these angst that we have. And in the addiction field, when I look at people say, oh, look how codependent everybody is around this addiction. And I'm like, if they had cancer and everybody was this riled up, you'd call it love.
Well, right. You see, and the beauty of that is, again, this is something that I've taken from Sue, and probably you've said it too, is all those things that you're talking about, all those ways that we feel disconnected, that we feel angry, that we feel hurt, all those things. It is because this other person is so important. Because if my wife wasn't so important to me, if feeling her love and feeling safe with her and feeling connected, if that wasn't so important, I wouldn't get so angry. Right?
And then to just say as like a little, caveat, if you're in a relationship and it's genuinely abusive, right? Or you have to compromise your dignity to be in this relationship in ways that just don't feel good and feed like a shame and things like this. Like if a person is violent towards you, like if the person's addiction is taking you down into such a bad place that you're at risk of losing yourself, we do it. It doesn't mean that because there's a bond there, you have to be in active connection with the person. But even then, I would want, if you're like with an individual therapist, for them to honor that bond, to say, over the years, you figured out that father of yours is not safe and you just can't have contact. Maybe we could talk to him in an empty chair and tell him about the loss you've suffered and let the person cry over that. Feel the grief of this bond not being, uh, uh, available and safe. That what we're saying as attachment therapists is that we're born with an expectation of being met and being in relationship. Just like we have raised dogs over the last, whatever it is, 50,000 years and bred them away from wolves to have their ecology is to be with humans. Their environment is to be with humans. They can live anywhere on the planet as long as humans are there. They don't do well in the wild. And we're that way with each other. That we have a social brain, we have an emotional brain, we have an attachment drive, we have a caretaking system, we have a play system. In romantic relationship, we have our sexual system. These are all things that bring people into importance, that other people are important. And like you said, Sue, in Love Sense, must be about page 22, says, we are only truly at our best when we have at least one other person that we can feel this kind of safe attachment with. And we know from plethora of research that loneliness, perceived or real isolation, is not good for us as social mammals.
Well, and here's an example of that. I think we're actually getting close to an endpoint because well, there's a lot of great stuff that has come out. I'm gonna have to watch this over because I'm so excited about what you've shared, Jim, and where this has gone. But I just wanted to make sure that to reiterate something that you just said, which is to our listeners that there is a real difference between relationships that are toxic and that are dangerous, and that where people really do, have to compromise their dignity, and it becomes a very dangerous place. And I want people to know that it's okay. It's okay to be very honest with yourself about the question is this relationship safe? Because there are times when we absolutely need to work on things and connect and do the hard work together. And there are times when people need to say goodbye. And there are times when people need to be, I don't want to say protect themselves, but I just wanted to say that because that kind of touches my heart, because I hope that what we're doing here, Jim, in this podcast, I hope this is giving people out there more hope and giving them a greater sense of that almost that they deserve connection and that they deserve love and respect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then we're giving them resources. I think the book Love Sense, the science of romantic relationships, is, dealing with partner distress, is a great read by Sue Johnson. To see a therapist that believes in and cares about relationship. Individual therapy is correlated with more with relationships ending than relationships getting stronger, because the individual therapist is limited to your take on your partner or family member. And it's not to say it's not accurate. If that father were hypothetical father or parent or something, his mother has been cruel and abusive for years, if you were raised in mommy dearest land, then your therapist's advice to, like, you need to take care of yourself and let this go, is good advice. But you and I know that we get caught in positions and we get one dimensional and we get locked in these reactive cycles. And if I go tell my therapist, that Patrice is always blank, 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 was that really what you wanted in the marriage? It's a big difference between this person is annoying me and I can't get the love I'm looking for, and I don't know how to give them love that they'll take, and the kind of abusive situation we're talking about. I think the other part is, if you're going to go see a couples therapist, for example, maybe ask them, so tell me about, what do you think about emotional bonds in marriages or committed relationships, or what do you think about the primary partnership in a poly relationship? Tell me what, lead them a little bit and see what they say. And if they're neutral, I wouldn't go see them.
Yeah, and I would say, again, we're biased, but that's why the name of this podcast is The Attachment Lens. And I would agree and tell people that the only therapist that I ever send people to are people who are acquainted and they've made peace and they know about attachment, because that's to me, that's what gives the safety.
Yeah, and I sit in this office and people, a good half of the couples that come to see me for an intensive are in dire straits. Another chunk are dealing with things like affair recovery or early in addiction recovery, or, and if I just went off the surface of what they told me in like an initial phone call, and I was neutral, and they came and I was just like, I didn't believe that the bond mattered and it was there, it wouldn't have the success rate I have. It's very high, right? I couldn't promise to every couple, if you come see me, we'll turn things around, but that's my belief, is that it's possible outside of these extreme lands, these like really unsafe situations, and go find somebody that'll fight harder than maybe the two of you will, because you're down and out and worn out and tired and ready to throw in the towel, but you don't really quite want to throw in the towel. I don't want to give up on my sibling.
Yeah.
I don't want to give up on my parent. Maybe talk to somebody about working with that person rather than talking about that person with a third party. And if you're going to have a third party individual therapist, find one that values these relationships and will try to hold that person in a caring way in their absence.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why, really what's in my heart for this podcast is that we're offering, and we're really talking about giving people hope and trying to help people, just like you're saying, Jim, to understand that just because there's fighting, just because there's conflict, that doesn't mean that things can't work out and things can't change, especially because we know that the conflict is usually there, or the difficult feelings, because people do matter to each other so much. And I think that's a theme of what we're talking about, is that there are those bonds, and we're just hoping, and I'm hoping for the listeners here today, that this might give them a little more hope and help them understand that
Yeah, maybe in a bit we could talk again and let's define closeness in emotional terms. We'll talk briefly about the importance of vulnerability, and then do this, like the 5 tips for how to foster this as a layperson in your life with a partner, with a best friend, you know, with a sibling or something, that where it's like, gosh, I just wish that we could be more closer to each other. That we are, I believe that in Jim there is a connection, but damn, it's a frustrating one, and I'd like
Well,
it to be a fulfilling one.
yeah, and you know what we could do? We did this on a past is maybe what we'll do also is we'll do a couple of role plays, and I'll bring some, you know, some of the typical things that people bring to a therapist, and so our, you know, our guests can hear a little bit more about how attachment and emotionally focused therapy works. So
Yeah.
listen, Jim, I think that this does this feel complete to you? Is there anything?
Yeah, well, it's been a delight. It's I hope what we're sharing is useful. I certainly get energized talking about what I think is the truth of this, that we are relational beings, we're social mammals. We get core attachments, and we have emotions that are there to tell us all about them. And I'd like our society to be a bit better of a society for relationships. It's been so focused on the individual for so long, and it's lonely out there as an individual. You know, what is it? You gain the whole world but don't have connections. Doesn't sound very good.
Well, I agree, and I think especially right now when there's so much, you know, there's so much war in this world. I think what we're talking about is hoping that we can help individuals maybe have more peace and love and less war in their hearts. You know.
Yeah, be with each other and supporting each other and sharing with each other as much as the human heart desires. Thanks, Ed. I'm glad you're doing this. It's a great
Oh,
title.
well, great. And I just want to repeat that today we've been having this wonderful conversation, which is just so, this is exactly what I was hoping for, Jim. I'm just feel delighted with this. And again, folks, this wonderful man here in front of us, Dr. Not doctor. It's funny, I always call you doctor.
I was called an emotional cardiologist by a surgeon recently, so maybe I could.
I like it. Emotional cardiologist, Jim Thomas, marriage and family therapist, working in Colorado. And he does intensives. Jim works with lots of clients. He is open to working with people. Intensives are when people come and spend, you know, a whole day or multiple days doing a lot of therapy work together. Jim is an expert in addiction, has put together workshops around the world. I won't go into all of it, but Jim, again, how can people find you if they want to
Oh,
find you?
easy, jimthomas.care, because jimthomas.com has been for sale for like $12,000 for 20 years. And then I found .care one day and I thought, well, I do. Okay, jimthomas.care. I like that. Easy to remember.
JimThomas.care. Okay, that is great. Well, listen, my friend, my brother, thank you. And how about we call this episode 1, and
There we
we'll
go. Yeah.
soon do episode 2.
Sounds great. And
Okay.
best wishes to everyone out there. Just honoring that you're an emotional being wired for connection, and we're on your side in that.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you again, Jim, and we will be talking soon. So thank you, folks, for joining us here on this podcast, The Attachment Lens. Again, I'm Ed Peterson, licensed clinical social worker and EFT therapist in Salt Lake City, Utah. You can reach me at my website, which is www.petersonfamilytherapy.com. Peterson. I practice with my wife, Candace, and I'm also available. And I just love this work. And Jim, thank you. And we will look forward to our next podcast. And thank you for you folks who have listened to us, because it's also an honor to be listened to.
Yeah, we appreciate you.
All right, Jim, take care.
You too.